What's up, guys? It's Andrew from travelingguitarist.com. Today I'm talking to you about scalloped guitar necks. More specifically, what are they? What are some of the pros and cons of using them? So let's talk about it right now. So essentially, a scalloped guitar neck, like you can see here, is where the wood between the frets has been carved out on a concave curve like this. And that's essentially what a scalloped guitar neck does. You might have seen someone like Yngwie, I don't know how to say his name. I think it's Yngwie Malmsteen. He's the one that kind of popularized the scalloped guitar neck. But the idea behind a scalloped neck is, you file down the wood between the frets in order to reduce the amount of pressure it takes to fret each note. So while it makes it easier to produce bends and vibrato, it can actually make it a little more difficult to play because it takes a reduced amount of pressure, so it goes out of tune easily when you're playing chords and things like that. So some of the pros of using a scalloped guitar neck is that there's easier bends and vibrato, like I just mentioned. So because the wood has been scooped out between the frets, there's a reduced amount of pressure that it takes. So there's actually, well, if you think about it, when you press your finger on the string, there's no wood underneath it, so you can actually just like bend it a lot easier because it's not touching against anything really. It also forces you to play with a much lighter touch. Now you could argue that this is a con or an advantage depending on how you want to look at it. But some people say that it makes you more, it forces you to be more articulate in terms of your playing technique, and for that reason, it's kind of a good way to develop your kind of like idiosyncratic way of approaching the instrument, or a better way of putting it is it essentially forces you to work on your technique and be a little more concise and precise in your movements. Other people say that it's easier for legato as well, and that really makes sense if you take into consideration the fact that it takes less pressure to fret the notes, because legato is when you just hit one string and then you use hammer on and pull off all over the place, right? Well, you can just strike the string once and then just continue, fretting with your left hand or your right hand, and you can just do legatos all day. Some other people also say it's easier to do the tapping technique as well, and that makes sense because, like I said before, if there's a reduced amount of pressure needed, that means that when you tap on it with your right hand, or what would normally be your picking hand, it takes less pressure to actually fret the note. And as I said before, there's more articulation and clarity depending on how good you are at using the neck, the scalloped guitar neck. However, on the other hand, if you're self-conscious or insecure about your playing in any way, there's a good chance that maybe you won't even like a scalloped guitar neck because you're gonna hear more of those differences in terms of how you're playing the instrument. Another cool aspect of it is the fact that it's more microtonal, or it's more apt at producing microtonal differences. So in other words, because it's easier to bend the note, like you can actually just like bend the strings up just a tiny little bit. So rather than going up, say, half a step, you could go up a quarter step much easier, or even an eighth of a step. Some of the cons, however, are that it's actually harder to move your hands up and down the fretboard. And that's because the frets kind of act like ridges. It's almost like you're running your hands up like a fretboard covered in speed bumps. So it's like, you know what I mean? Like if you run your fingers across the neck, it's less smooth the way it would be with a regular guitar. So when people say the neck is faster, it's actually not the case. If anything, it's even slower to have a scalloped fretboard. So when you shift positions with your left hand, you're going to have a lighter touch in order to be able to shift it smoothly across the neck. And the last con I would say is the fact that it's easier to put out of tune. And that's just because of the same thing that I mentioned before with the microtonal differences, where it's much easier to apply too much pressure and pull the notes out of tune. But other than that, that's kind of the long and short of a scalloped guitar neck. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have one to do a demonstration, but I mean, they're pretty cool. I definitely would like to have one sometime in the future. And not only that, but you can even have guitars customized in such a way where you could have the frets scalloped on the, say from the 19th to the 24th fret on the bottom, on the high end E string, the high E. So that's kind of cool that you can do it that way. I mean, but anyway, I hope this was helpful to you. I hoped it helped illustrate what some of the differences are between a scalloped guitar neck and a regular one. As you can see here, this is what it really looks like up close. Like you can see how it's cut out in between the frets like that. But anyway, make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. All right, see you later.